All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Kabbalistic Wisdom, Embracing Limitations for Spiritual Growth, written by Conrad Riker, available now, links in description. Kabbalistic Wisdom, a red-pilled map for the argument nobody wants to have. I watch you sit across from her in the dim light of an overpriced restaurant, obediently parroting the exhausted scripts the culture welded into your skull. You tell her she is strong, independent, and fierce. You think you are offering a compliment, a careful recitation of modern female empowerment. She stiffens because she instinctively knows what you are too terrified to admit. You are a deaf man reading a brochure. You have validated her armor instead of addressing the human being trapped inside it. When a man praises a woman's corporate utility over her actual nature, he is not demonstrating respect. He is paying a verbal tax to a regime that despises him. You are merely singing the flat, monotonous chants of a dead religion. You haven't looked at her. You've glanced at her resume and called it love. When she inevitably sighs and says, "You just don't see me," she is right. You are blind by your own cowardice. This domesticated weakness bleeds into every interaction you have. God forbid her brother or her obnoxious friend makes a mildly provocative joke at your expense over drinks. What do? You swallow your pride, give a nervous chuckle, and look to her for permission to exist. You think you are keeping the peace. You are actually failing a high-stakes diagnostic test. Women are exquisitely calibrated survival machines. When they watch you fold like a cheap suit during a zero-stakes mock argument, they calculate with ruthless biological logic your inability to protect them when the actual wolves arrive. You lack gravitas, you have no forge, no fire, no controlled thumos. You are untested steel that bends in a warm breeze, and she is already calculating her exit strategy. Your inability to hold your frame is exactly what the gynocentric machine demands, because it relies on your complicity to enforce its central self-devouring lie, the autonomy paradox. We are told in the same breath that women are fiercely independent, rational agents fully equal to men in the boardroom and the battlefield. Yet simultaneously they are helpless, mind-controlled infants the moment they step into a bedroom, a voting booth, or a divorce lawyer's office. Let us apply the law of non-contradiction. If she is a fully sovereign agent, she bears the total consequences of her choices. If she is a victim of invisible structural oppression, she is not autonomous, and her demands for authority are logically null and void. Feminism demands the rights of sovereigns and the accountability of children. It is a performative contradiction that collapses the moment the spotlight of basic logic hits it. Yet you pay for this ideological cancer with your life's blood. You work 90-hour weeks, quietly maintaining the grid, paying the vast majority of net income taxes, and dying in 92% of workplace accidents, all for a civilization that treats your masculinity as a pathology. But the true harvest of your complicity is reaped in the sterile fluorescence of the family courts, the ultimate crucible where fatherhood goes to die. I have seen the data. Mothers receive sole physical custody in roughly 80% of cases. You can be evicted from the home you built on the whisper of an unverified accusation, stripped of your children without a jury, without a crime, and without due process. You are forced into a debtor's prison of imputed child support, while a legally sanctioned racket turns your legacy into state-subsidized villainy. This isn't a system error. It's the exact design of a machine that views fathers as expendable ATMs. It is time to shut up, stop reading their scripts, and open your eyes to the architecture of your own ruin. The compliment that confessed when praise proves you cannot see. Consider the tragic comedy of the modern mating market. A man dates a woman for 6 months. He praises her job title, her apartment, her degree, and her boundaries. She dumps him, and he is baffled. He missed the entire biological reality. She is terrified no one will love her for anything except her utility. Every compliment he gave confirmed that terror. He was not her lover. He was her linked-in connection wearing cologne. When a man tells a woman she is strong and independent, she stiffens. He has just told her he is deaf, dumb, and blind. He read the HR brochure every man is handed by our gynocentric culture and recited it like a student who memorized the wrong exam. That compliment was not an act of perception. It was a confession wearing a smile. Let us lock our definitions. The word compliment descends from the Latin complementum, meaning that which fills up or completes. A true compliment completes perception. The word appreciate comes from appreciare, meaning to set a price, to value. To appreciate someone is to weigh, measure, and assign worth. If you are not praising what is actually there, you are injecting counterfeit currency into the economy of speech. Worse, the Old English root of sion, means to behold or perceive. Perception is not passive reception, it is an active moral act. The modern man has been trained to compliment the resume rather than the soul. He praises what a woman has accomplished rather than what she is. This is the flattery of a courtier addressing a sovereign he fears, not love operating under truth. Aristotle mapped 3 objects of friendship: utility, pleasure, and virtue. The modern mating market operates entirely on the first 2, which is why every compliment feels like a transaction. When a man praises a woman's career ambition before her warmth, or her credentials before her character, he validates her armor instead of addressing the person trapped inside it. This is gamma bias capitulation. The culture has convinced men that praising traditional feminine virtues is reductionist, while praising careerist androgyny is respectful. By validating her marketplace utility, the man has accepted a frame where the only acceptable compliment treats a woman as a slightly smaller man with better skincare. His compliment does not flatter, it accuses. It says, "I have looked at you, found only the surface, and I am satisfied with the surface." Consider the evolutionary biological layer. Female mate selection psychology evolved to be acutely sensitive to male discernment. A man who perceives what others miss demonstrates cognitive capacity, attentional surplus, and the sustained interest that predicts long-term investment. If a woman has spent 12 grueling years building a career as a litigator, she does not want a man to praise her billable hours. She secretly wants him to tell her she has a beautiful singing voice, or that she lights up when talking about her grandmother, or that she possesses a rare capacity for tenderness she hides from a brutal world. The man who notices this has demonstrated a faculty of attention no dating app can manufacture. Complimenting the wrong things signals poor monitoring capacity, registering at an unconscious level as a catastrophic fitness failure. Deep in the classical traditions of the Sefirot, the transcendental of beauty, Tiferet, is the synthesis of chesed, boundless loving kindness, and gevurah, rigorous judgment and limitation. A compliment that is all kindness without judgment is mere flattery. It expands without form. A compliment that is all judgment without kindness is mere critique. The wrong compliment fails because it is chest without gevurah, boundless approval poured into the wrong vessel. You must cultivate particularity in observation. Do not compliment what any man could compliment after 5 minutes. Master the negative space, compliment, tell her, "You are the least vain person I have ever met." This identifies a chosen virtue, not a genetic accident, proving you have been watching over time, not merely glancing. Of course, we must expose the rank hypocrisy here. Men are starving for accurate perception of themselves, yet the empathy gap runs strictly in one direction. The same woman who laments "you don't see me" has never once told her husband that the way he checks the tire pressure before every road trip is a profound act of love. She demands he pierce her armor with supernatural intuition, yet she remains totally blind to his quiet repairs of broken household infrastructure. This commits the mind-reading fallacy, the assumption that love entails omniscience. The test of a man's interest is not whether he guesses the password to your ego. The test is whether he listens once told. State what you wish to be seen for, then evaluate his response. Ultimately, a woman's complaint that "you don't see me" hides a premise she has been brainwashed by cultural Marxism to deny. She believes she has an essential nature worth seeing. Identity is discovered, not constructed. But the woke ideology that trained the man to give the wrong compliment also taught the woman to deny she has any fixed nature. The contradiction is not resolved, it is enacted through mutual frustration. Here is the closing syllogism. If a compliment is an act of perception, and perception requires attending to essence rather than accident, then the man who consistently praises accidents has confessed he cannot perceive essence. The remedy is not better words. The remedy is better sight, which demands the courage to look at what is actually there, and the strength to name it. That same courage to see what is actually there, to strike the anvil of reality rather than flinch from the spark, does not limit itself to the soft economy of compliments. It reveals itself with even greater severity in the theater of male friction, where I have watched men test each other's mettle through the controlled collision of disagreement. The therapeutic industrial complex calls this dysfunction. Every civilization prior to ours called it friendship. The manufactured quarrel, conflict as crucible of male character. I once watched two men lock horns over pints while their dates sat in silence, eyes darting like hawks. One casually mocked the other's blind loyalty to a historically terrible football team. The tension hung thick enough to slice. The women were not watching the argument. They were reading a diagnostic more accurate than any clinical inventory. Could this man sustain a disagreement without losing his humor, his frame, or his dignity? The Latin root of conflict, conflictus, simply means a striking together. It is not a malfunction of relationship. It is a metallurgical stress test. Two elements strike to reveal what bends, what breaks, and what holds its temper. The modern lie insists that all friction is trauma, but peace maintained through cowardice is merely a deferred collapse. The therapeutic industrial complex commits a grotesque logical fallacy by pathologizing this ritual. They commit the continuum fallacy, assuming that because all conflict exists on a spectrum, all conflict is equally dangerous. This is identical to arguing that because a warm bath and a forest fire both involve heat, bath time is a deadly emergency. They deliberately ignore the natural law. Man is a rational and political animal. Rational means possessing the cognitive architecture to distinguish a genuine threat from a play signal. Political means capable of maintaining bonds through disagreement. When cultural Marxists and feminist ideologues successfully ban honest friction, they do not eliminate aggression, they drive it into covert, feminine channels, passive aggression, gossip, and silent withdrawal. They replace the forge with the toxic miasma of resentment. This yields a catastrophic asymmetry. We see male mock conflict scrutinized as toxic pathology, while female-coded conflict is coddled as processing. Compare the two formats. Two men argue about sports, trade barbs, shake hands, and buy the next round. Two women have a minor disagreement over seating arrangements, and 3 years later, one still cannot attend the same social events. The former is rule-governed, bounded, and resolves quickly. The latter is unbounded, deniable, and permanently damaging to reputations. Yet gamma bias dictates that we subsidize the latter as emotional labor while medicating the former. The empirical data is overwhelming. Cultures with robust mock conflict rituals among males have drastically lower rates of actual interpersonal violence. Mock conflict is not adjacent to violence, it is the proven substitute for it. Consider the pathetic spectacle of the modern man who fails this test. He exhibits what the classical tradition recognizes as irascibilité manquée, not merely excessive anger, but anger completely without a rudder. He either escalates into rage over a mild jab or collapses into sulking and appeals to his girlfriend for protection. He lacks the Aristotelian mean. The virtuous man is angered by the right things, toward the right people, in the right way, and for the exact right duration. Worst still is the over-prepared dogmatist, who approaches every banter exchange as a frame battle to be won. He is so obsessed with dominance that he cannot be genuinely playful. The fully formed man can lose a mock argument gracefully because his identity is not threatened by a joke. He saves his real conviction for the real fight. We must understand the profound architecture of what is actually happening here. In the ancient traditions of the Sephirot, Gevurah, severity, judgment, limitation, stands opposite Chesed, loving kindness, expansion. True harmony requires their synthesis in Tiferet. Mock conflict is Gevurah in the service of Chesed, the severity of the argument serving the love of the friendship. Strip away the severity, and the friendship becomes a hollow compliment, all expansion without form. When male friends perform a mock dispute in front of others, they are demonstrating to each other and to observers that the bond can absorb friction without rupturing. It is an ordeal of controlled opposition. It produces a harmonious opposition that allows both men to walk away with increased respect. Women are exquisitely calibrated to detect this exact quality because a man lacking it is a liability. When a woman watches a man handle a joke, she is evaluating his capacity for protective violence. She is not assessing whether he is physically violent, but whether his capacity for controlled force can be deployed in her defense. The man who collapses under teasing cannot be trusted to stand firm under threat. The man who escalates over a haircut joke cannot be trusted to show restraint when restraint matters. The sweet spot, proportionate, witty, and unshaken, signals a man whose aggression is governable. Male friendship groups have functioned as vetting institutions since the Spartan Cryptia and the medieval guilds. She trusts this ancient vetting process more than any modern reference check. The syllogism is absolute. A man's capacity for self-governance is revealed under social friction. Mock conflict produces social friction without actual stakes. Therefore, mock conflict is a low-cost, high-signal diagnostic of a man's self-governance under pressure. Would the common riots, the farmers, soldiers, and grandfathers of the world believe that two men arguing over a drink is psychological dysfunction? No. The ordinary man recognizes this as the rhythm by which men have always measured each other. When you are tested, do not escalate beyond the provocation, never appeal to the woman, and return fire with wit, not venom. A man is not known by how he handles agreement. A man is known by how he carries disagreement. If you cannot govern your thumos when nothing is on the line, no one will trust you when everything is. But here is where the diagnostic turns from the personal to the systemic. We hold men to that standard without apology, and rightly so. Your choices are yours, your failures are yours, your consequences are yours. Yet the instant that identical standard is applied to women, an entire ideological apparatus whirs into motion to shield them from the very accountability we consider elementary for any functioning man. I have watched this double standard harden into law, into campus tribunals, into family courts, and into corporate policy, and I can tell you exactly how the machine was constructed. It rests on a single, fatal contradiction at the heart of modern feminist legal theory, one that collapses the moment you drag it into the open air of formal logic. The autonomy paradox, how feminism's central pillar refutes its own architecture. Imagine a legal framework that declares a specific demographic fully sovereign, then immediately insists those same people lack the cognitive capacity to consent to the very conditions of their sovereignty. You are living in it. Let us define our terms. The word autonomy derives from the Greek autos, self, and nomos law. It means self-legislation. It demands rational competence. Consent comes from the Latin con, together, and sentire, to perceive. Consent is fundamentally an epistemic sharing of reality. Modern feminism constructs a fatal syllogism. Major premise: women are fully autonomous agents, equal in rational capacity to men. Minor premise: Patriarchal structures so thoroughly infect society that a woman's choices are never genuinely free. Conclusion: women are simultaneously completely autonomous and entirely lacking autonomy. This is a blatant violation of the law of non-contradiction. Let us steelman their position for a moment. Social pressure undeniably shapes human desires. Advertising exists for a reason. But if an invisible power structure invalidates a woman's consent, then it invalidates all consent. If every woman is a brainwashed puppet of the patriarchy, then the feminist theorist denouncing the patriarchy is also a brainwashed puppet. Her critique means nothing. It is a performative contradiction. Apply the sex swap test. If I sit in family court and argue my signature on a predatory mortgage was structurally coerced by a matriarchy controlling education and domestic spending, the judge throws me in a cell for contempt. But apply that exact logic to a woman's choices, and suddenly we must burn down the justice system. It is intellectual insanity masquerading as empathy. Contrast this with how the law treats you. If a man impregnates a woman, his choice binds him to 18 years of financial extraction. He chose, he pays. If a woman chooses to terminate the pregnancy, abort the child, or surrender it for adoption, her choice absolves her of all responsibility. The autonomy feminist cheers this as liberation. But what is the actual telos of this framework? It does not maximize female agency, it maximizes female exemption from consequence while demanding total authority. It renames female accountability as victim blaming and elevates female irresponsibility to structural critique. It rebrands male provision as control and basic male expectations of reciprocity as entitlement. This is not the ethic of a sovereign. It is the pathetic whining of a dependent who demands to be treated like a queen. The ancient metaphysical concept of the tzimtzum, the divine self-limitation that creates space for genuine agency, reveals the mechanism of true freedom. God withdraws to make room for human choice, meaning autonomy is a received space governed by natural law and moral accountability. Autonomy without limit is not freedom, it is formless expansion. Modern feminist ideology violently removes the container of obligation while expecting the contents to remain perfectly coherent. The result is a messy spillage of agency poured onto the floor. Look at the institutional fruit over 50 years. We have campus tribunals destroying due process, family courts treating fathers as presumptive abductors, and sexual harassment doctrines so broad that ordinary conversation is legally hazardous. Women get rights without duties. Men get duties without protections. Watch how this ideology devours its own. Consider the feminist civil war over pornography. One faction screams that women are autonomous agents choosing compensated labor. Another screams that no woman can freely choose sex work because the patriarchy structurally coerces her. They cannot resolve this because the framework provides no standard for separating free choice from coerced choice when everything is presumed coerced. The theory is completely unfalsifiable. If a woman says she is free, she is a traumatized dupe. If she claims oppression, she is a prophet. Who pays the cost ledger for this madness? Men do. You pay with your reputations, your children, and your paychecks. This paradox is the engine driving policies that criminalize your male gaze while celebrating her OnlyFans. Genuine autonomy requires 4 pillars: competence to reason, access to unfiltered facts, accountability for your actions, and absolute reciprocity. Strip away any of these and you do not have liberation. You have counterfeit currency. A booming market in worthless transactions always ends in collapse when the bill comes due. You cannot simultaneously claim total sovereignty and perpetual victimhood over the exact same act. If she chose, she bears the consequences of the choice. If she did not choose, she does not bear sovereignty over the act, and neither does the ideology that claims to speak for her. A framework that denies female agency while demanding female authority is a cage welded from contradiction, and its very first prisoner is the truth itself. That contradiction does not stay in the seminar room. I have watched it walk out the door, put on judicial robes, and take a seat behind the bench. When a civilization codifies a self-refuting premise into its statutes, the contradiction does not dissolve under practical pressure, it selects its victims. The surplus authority promised to women who are simultaneously declared incapable of exercising. It has to land somewhere. It lands in the hands of the state. And the state, murmuring the borrowed language of compassion and safety, converts that confiscated authority into procedural machinery designed to separate fathers from the very things nature built them to protect. The court as crucible, how family law became the state's war on fatherhood. A man sits in a courtroom he helped pay for, before a judge whose salary his taxes fund, in a building guarded by men like him, and is told he may see his children every other weekend. He committed no crime. He was accused of no crime. He is simply a father, and in this courtroom, fatherhood has been reclassified as a privilege, revocable by administrative fiat. Sit with that. The most fundamental bond in the natural world, the one that built every civilization currently standing, reduced to a bi-weekly visitor's pass by a magistrate who met his children 12 minutes ago. If this happened to any other class of human beings, the United Nations would issue resolutions, but because the victim is a father, we call it standard procedure and send him the bill. Here is what standard procedure actually means. The presumption of innocence gone, the right to confront your accuser gone. The standard of evidence beyond reasonable doubt replaced with preponderance, which is a coin flip wearing a robe. The right to a jury non-existent. A man can lose his children, his home, his income, and his liberty on the basis of an ex parte hearing, one he was not invited to, at which no evidence was cross-examined, and from which no appeal can repair the damage before stumperary becomes permanent. The word is due process. From Latin de processus, the course the state must follow before depriving you of anything. Without it, law is not law. It is bureaucracy with weapons, and the weapon is pointed at you. Then there is the best interests of the child, a phrase that sounds unimpeachable and functions as a blank check. What are these interests? Nobody defines them. Studies of family court outcomes show that best interests analysis routinely collapses into a judge's personal preferences, cultural assumptions, or caseload management priorities. A standard this elastic is not a standard. It is licensed subjectivity. And when licensed subjectivity operates inside a system with structural incentives favoring maternal custody, it produces maternal custody regardless of the father's fitness. The old tender years doctrine, the explicit presumption that young children belong with mother, was formally abolished decades ago. In practice, it simply changed its name. Mothers receive sole physical custody in approximately 80% of cases. The label evolved, the outcome did not. This is equality the way a coin flip is a meritocracy. Consider the construction worker in Ohio who loses his job during a recession. He falls behind on support, not because he abandoned his children, but because his industry contracted. He files for modification. The process takes 6 months. Arrears accumulate at the original rate. His driver's license is suspended, so he cannot reach the new job he found. His professional license is flagged. His tax refund is intercepted. He is trapped in a debt spiral engineered by the state, and child support debt uniquely cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. This is not system failure. This is the system working exactly as designed. Yet we call him a deadbeat. The actual predictors of child support non-payment are unemployment, underemployment, and incarceration, not volitional refusal. Men who can pay, do pay. Men who cannot are reclassified as men who will not erased by one word. Because family courts operate under diluted evidentiary standards, and because accusations of abuse carry immediate procedural rewards, removal from the home, temporary sole custody, elevated support awards, there is a structural incentive for strategic accusation. I am not claiming every accusation is false. I am stating that the system rewards the false one with the identical outcome it gives the true one, while imposing no meaningful penalty for perjury. The incentive map runs one direction. Accusation costs nothing. Defense costs everything. Let me formalize this. A just legal system applies the same standards to all parties regardless of sex. Family courts systematically apply lower standards to accusations against fathers, presumptions favoring mothers, and enforcement mechanisms targeting men. Therefore, family courts are not a just legal system as applied to fathers. They are a sex-differentiated extraction apparatus, operating under the aesthetic of law. The natural law tradition, Aristotle, Aquinas, the common law, recognizes that the family precedes the state. Parents possess a natural right to the care and company of their children that no magistrate may abridge without proof of unfitness. The family is not a creation of the state. It is the pre-political community from which the state derives its legitimacy. When the state distributes children between parents as though allocating property, the servant has claimed mastery over the household. What does it profit a civilization to train its men to build, protect, provide, and sacrifice, then strip them of their children once they have done so? After 50 years of this, we get exactly what we see: declining marriage, declining fertility, declining male civic participation, and a generation of men who have correctly calculated that the system treats them as extractable resources, not stakeholders. The cost ledger is merciless. Fatherlessness remains the single strongest predictor of child poverty, educational failure, criminal involvement, and mental illness. Family court involvement is a documented risk factor for male suicide, and loss of children is frequently cited as the precipitating event. A court that presumes a father must prove his right to his own children has already decided that fatherhood is not a right but a privilege, and privileges are revocable. But a civilization built on revocable fatherhood is built on sand, because fathers are not sand. They are the foundation. Remove them and you do not get liberation. You get a structure with nothing underneath it, held up briefly by paperwork, certain to collapse. The court that amputates fatherhood borrows against the civilizational ledger at compound interest, and the bill always comes due, charged to the children. I look at you and I see a man who has been sold a counterfeit reality, handed a script written by feminist ideologues and cultural Marxists, and beaten with a stick every time you ad-libbed. You have been told that your natural masculine instincts are pathologies, that your provision is a privilege, and that your fatherhood is a revocable government license. Consider the cold, unforgiving ledger of this corrupt regime, a family court system that strips fathers from the lives of their children in 80% of cases, treating your offspring as state property and your paycheck as an extraction zone. We live in a society where a woman can legally abort your son or daughter without your consent. But if she chooses to keep the child, you will be dragged into a modern debtor's prison disguised as a child support ledger. If you lose your job, your driver's license is revoked, your professional credentials are burned, and your wages are garnished, all to subsidize her independence. When the courts strip you of your children, your home, and your future, the state wonders why male suicide outpaces female suicide by a staggering margin. They medicalize your despair and feed you therapy jargon, because if they actually named the cause of your pain, they would have to indict themselves. This is the tyranny of unchecked gonocentrism, a subterranean rot-feeding on the corpse of classical civilization. You have been brainwashed to compliment her corporate resume, tolerate her endless solipsism, and finance her hypergamy, all while ignoring the biological reality that female nature is fundamentally amoral when unbound by traditional virtue and heavily subsidized by the state. Paternity fraud plagues up to 10% of the population, a literal cuckoldry enforced by courts that demand you pay for another man's genetic victory. This is the autonomy paradox entirely exposed. She is a strong, independent woman when she wants your wallet, but a helpless, traumatized victim the moment you demand accountability. The feminist framework is a performative contradiction. If women are equal in rational capacity, they must bear equal consequence. If they are truly helpless victims of structural patriarchy, then they are not competent to vote, sign contracts, or hold office. You cannot simultaneously claim absolute sovereignty and total victimhood over the same act. They demand the rights of sovereigns and the exemptions of children, paid for by your sweat, your blood, and your silence. But you are awake now. You see the hidden machinery, the gamma bias, the Marxist acid dissolving the social contract, and the financial incentive driving the destruction of the household. You must realize that swallowing this truth is not a license to wallow in grievance. It is a mandate to own your shit and build an impenetrable frame. Stop leaking your power through public apologies. Stop seeking validation from a culture that despises you. And stop playing a rigged game by rules designed for your enslavement. Reclaim the logos. Anchor yourself to the classical canon, the absolute truths of natural law, and the unyielding reality of biology. Lift the iron, master the trivium, secure your assets, enforce your boundaries, and build brotherhoods of rational men who will stand with you when the state's collection agents arrive. You are the inheritors of the men who built the aqueducts, drafted the Magna Carta, and framed the Constitution. You are not a defect class. You are the load-bearing pillar of the entire world. Take this truth, sear it into your mind, and let it forge you into steel. You now possess the intellectual ammunition to dismantle every feminist slogan and debunk every critical theory that crosses your path using nothing but formal logic and historical precedent. Go forth, speak the truth with calm, unyielding defiance, and build a civilization within the ruins of this modern Babylon. Stand tall, govern your own domain, and let the ideologues scream into the void while you construct a legacy of virtue and competence that outlasts their miserable empire of lies. Sponsored book, Kabbalistic Wisdom, Embracing Limitations for Spiritual Growth. I was a ghost in my own life, college degrees, corporate titles, hollow victories, all while society told me to apologize for my drive, my discipline, my very biology. I watched men around me dissolve into mediocrity, sedated by therapy speak and toxic masculinity shaming. Then I found the texts. Not self-help platitudes, but centuries-old Kabbalistic manuscripts whispering a forbidden truth. God himself chose limitation as his ultimate power move. The Tzimtzum, divine contraction, wasn't weakness. It was the universe's first strategic retreat, creating space for creation through restraint. My rage found a blueprint. This book isn't for the faint of heart. If you've ever clenched your fist during a male allyship seminar or scoffed at unlimited potential gurus peddling spiritual cotton candy, you're home. We're rebuilding men using the same codes that let Moses split seas and Rothschilds build empires. You'll learn why 73% of men confuse freedom with license and how King David's restraint with Saul fixes that, how Navy SEALs channel Netzach endurance through Kabbalistic drills, and why your sexual energy, properly harnessed, can out-earn Oscar winners. Weakness isn't virtue. It's betrayal of your ancestors, your sons, and the divine spark that demands you lead. The data doesn't lie. Fatherless homes breed chaos, and men who swallow the vulnerability poison earn 18% less. We're done with that. Here, you'll transmute pain into sovereignty using Isaac Luria's shattered vessels, adopt Marcus Aurelius' time-blocked rituals, and discover why Churchill's wartime resolve beats any therapist's couch. If you're still masturbating to equality fairy tales or think toxic masculinity is anything but a linguistic trap, close this book now. Go knit a gender-neutral sweater. For the rest, the ones who feel the ancient pull of dominion, the tree of life awaits. Kabbalah isn't spirituality, it's a warfare manual. The Messianic age isn't coming, it's here. Lead it, or be ruled by those who've never hesitated to break you. Your ancestors didn't survive pogroms and deserts for you to cuckold yourself to #activism. The God Code is your draft notice. Enlist or evaporate. Kabbalistic Wisdom, Embracing Limitations for Spiritual Growth, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.